Harrison Botco, we're back. Our guest is architect Manolo Noche. We're talking about the topic being understanding restoration. This is in view or in reference to the churches or the many heritage sites that have fallen because of the devastation. What do we do with them? How do we understand it? And how should we have critical... Basically, the show is for us all to understand what is hard for us to see because hindi naman natin negosyo yan eh. At first sight, that's what I thought. Wag na, simbahan na lang magbayad dapat yan. After all, sila naman maanin yan eh. Tax-free naman sila eh. Only to realize, gee, if I let go of that, I lose part of my hand. I lose part of my feet. You see, it's part and parcel of all of us being Filipino. Let's go to our guest, architect. Understanding restoration, like you said earlier in the first part, it's not all that easy. It's the ability to restore to its original stature,
yes,
but not reconstruct, like you mentioned earlier this morning. I keep referring to that. For example, Intramuros, we rebuilt. Please explain that.
Well, again, as I said, there is two definitions there, restoration and reconstruction. Restoration means that we're bringing back items within a damaged structure so that the damaged structure can then become whole again. Reconstruction is basically bringing back what is already gone. So in Bohol, we're doing both. There are structures that require just simply restoration, and then there are structures which require total reconstruction.
But those structures that fell, we saw in moving pictures as they collapsed,
yes,
they fell
like
to the ground.
Santo Niño in
Cebu. Even the stones, it is important we use the same?
Yes, yes.
Brick per brick?
Yes. We need to bring back what can be brought back. And, you know, the stones that collapsed, they're still durable stones. You know,
they lasted 300 years.
They lasted 300 years, 200 years. And we have to take a look at these structures are primarily composed of two parts. You have the inner part of the building, and then you have the facing. The inner part of the building can be, to a certain extent, compromised. The outer part is what is visible to the naked eye.
Correct.
So it is the outer part that we need to salvage so that we can bring back that the facade to its original look and feel of how the building used to stand before the catastrophe.
And the inside or the function can be expanded for other multi-purpose, whatever.
The inside of the structure. When we're talking about the inside of the structure here, we're not talking about the space. We're talking about
the inside.
We're talking about the method, the thickness of the walls.
Yes,
when the belfry that you saw in moving pictures fell.
Yes.
What literally gave way is the internal membrane of the wall. That is what collapsed. That led now to the facade to similarly fall.
Correct. That's what we saw.
So what we now need to pick up are the broken pieces of external facade.
Yeah.
And then when we reconstruct this or rebuild this again, we will now use modern technology to build the inner wall and then bring back the old stone for the facing.
For the facing. So it is back to original, but it is built better.
Last
another
200, 300 years.
How about that issue where they use the binders to be egg
Well, yes, historically speaking, during the Spanish colonial period, there were no hardwares to speak about. There were no Holkims to sell
no
you
cement.
Bags
Quick
of
dry.
cement. None. So everything had to be made. Everything had to be made within the local vicinity. The earlier period of our colonization, it was the Spaniards who brought this technology to the Philippines. And we have to revive that technology. So how do we make now plaster? We do plaster by basically making all of the necessary chemical compositions to create that kind of binder. And it is comprised primarily of lime, which is basically either limestone or shells or anything that has a calcium component to it. This is broken up into powder form.
To be like a bone. Okay.
This is broken down into powder form, washed, and then baked, so that, or burned, and then the slake will then be collected, and it is this slake that you then mix with water, with sand, and with a binder. And the binder is usually anything that is sticky.
Yes.
And in some areas, they use tree sap or leaf sap, or as they say, you can also use
egg white.
Egg whites.
When you restore, you have to consider this. You have to consider these old technologies.
If we are very
at
much,
least for the exterior,
if
the
we're
visual.
very much purist, yes. If it's for the purpose of the exterior, yes as well. Because this is what is crucial in reconstructing or restoring, is that we do not lose sight of what was there before. There is a big difference wherein if the earthquake did not occur, day in and day out, you will see this structure as
Correct.
part of your lives. Now, considering that the earthquake occurred, something was lost in the
Correct.
structure. Now, if you want to bring it back, what would you want to be brought back? A pseudo-structure, or still the structure that is still familiar to your eyes, familiar to your touch? Because if we're going to build a new building designed like the old one, with probably, okay, the same proportions, but with modern concrete.
It
with
won't look the same.
It won't look the same.
Which
It's
is Intramuros.
Yes, which
some
is
of
like
the buildings.
Intramuros, or it's like Disneyland. But if we bring it back using as much as possible the original stones that we could still collect, that's on situ, then the building is still to a certain extent, what, 75%?
Back to
85%?
its original.
Back to its original.
Okay, question. Responsibility. Government should pay, the church should pay. The church owns the property, the church administrates the property. It is a house of worship.
Yes.
But if government pays, number one, does it own it? No. Politicians are only there for a temporary period of time because of their mandates, which make them, they are not, how do you say, there's no ownership to the job and to the country. So who should build this? Our leaders who think long-term, obviously, and the responsibility is government or the church? Or local
yes,
government?
The problem here now, or the main issue here now probably is the nobility of the intention. What do I mean by the nobility here? One is the church, when they build this, of course, it's for their purpose of administering faith.
Yes.
But then similarly, for government, it is the identity of a nation, the identity of a community.
Tama yun, kasi mga simbahan, mga ano natin
Yeah,
eh. Oo.
yeah. But then when we talk about the nobility here, it is, what is the ideal? You know, government should step in because we're talking about this is the identity of the country. But then church should also realize that unless government comes in, they cannot
do
rebuild
it.
this, especially if we're talking about coming from donation and tithes of a poor community.
Hindi kaya.
Most of the towns in Lubbock are really very poor, and they cannot rebuild these structures based on just collections and donations from their parishioners.
Yeah,
they can't do
that's
that.
basically, yeah.
So there has to come now other forms of funding, either be from, say, the government or from benevolent individuals who would
Yes.
want to rebuild this thing.
Yes, yes.
But then the church should realize as well that there is a need for a compromise here. This is not just simply the structure that the church owns. This is owned by the people. This is owned by the people of the community. This is owned by the people of the province. And it is further owned by the people of this country.
Everybody is involved.
Yes, and to a certain extent, we can even say it is owned by the people of the world.
So yung laws sa Bohol actually is also our laws, even though if I live here in Manila.
Yes, yes.
Kasi
and for some people, actually,
natatanggalan ka ng-
and we could even say, you know, if you are very profound about it, it is the loss of the whole of mankind. Because this is a church that was built during the 17th, 18th century in the Philippines to propagate faith in a small town, in a small...
And life.
Yes,
And life.
province.
Yeah,
So
province,
this is
yes.
an event that is very significant worldwide. And because it is important worldwide, then it is the responsibility of the world to rebuild this and bring it back. So we can expand it further. You know, it's not just simply, okay, it's the parish's loss. It's not the parish's loss. It's also the town's loss. It's also the province's loss.
Yes, it is.
It's also the region's loss, the Philippines' loss, our,
So,
you know.
well, okay, let's go past this. We have to build it.
Yes.
We have to rebuild it. We have to restore it, whether we like it or not. That is our position now. Okay. How should we do it? We should restore it properly. A figure was given for some 100 million by government. Based on how you explained restoration, I don't think that 100 million is going to be,
a
be
very,
near
you
enough.
know, if we're talking about just building a very beautiful house that will cost you roughly 40, 30 million.
Yes. Pwede.
You know, pwede. But then we're talking about a church, you know, a big building. This is not just a mansion. This is already a very...
And the approach, the discipline, is very different.
The discipline is very different. The discipline is very expensive.
Yes. And
So-
other than expertise, may study pa, may academic.
Yes,
may
because
academic
we're looking
thing,
at numerous factors here. Number one, we're looking at the geological conditions on site.
Geological conditions.
So this will now affect, of course, the kind of structure that one builds in the future, which will then result, to a certain extent, further expense. If this was a site wherein the earth is not moving, then, you know, we could build it using the traditional method of construction nowadays. But it's still moving.
Yes.
So that would mean that
everything's changed.
Anything that you're going to build now, there will have to look into consideration this type of earth factors. Then on top of that, you're talking about the availability of materials, the availability of manpower, and so forth and so on. Availability of materials is a big problem. There is now a ban on using hardwood, a ban on using coral stone. So where are you going to get materials?
I see your point.
Where are you going to get your hardwood?
But for this specific project, it should be allowed.
There should be at least some compromises again. Either you get it locally, or if not, you get it from imported from another country. So rebuilding is definitely a paramount concern. Rebuilding it properly is the next question there, because it will boil down again to, at the end, it's always a factor of cost. But then the question here is this: do we rebuild it so that we can rebuild it immediately, or is this going to be a long-term project? For me, I think, you know, as long as we, if it is going to be rebuilt properly, if it does take years, if not generations, so be it. Because most of these structures, especially the churches that got destroyed, were actually built through generations anyway.
Do we have the talent, the expertise to restore them?
We now have a budding pool of experts. In short, we are still very much in our infancy, but
we do have the
talent. But there is people now who are in the field, and similarly as well...
In the Philippines?
In the Philippines. And similarly as well, the world now has become very small, and it is very easy now to link up with the experts.
Yes, okay. So through the internet and technology, we can exchange innovations.
Yes.
Technology. Yes. But here, you have a group, the society, the Heritage Conservation. Between your grouping, surely you could adapt and correct and initiate the restoration ASAP, if necessary.
Yes, we can, of course, initiate or orchestrate the proper methods of conservation and restoration. But then again, it boils down to simply what are the abilities of the people on the ground to do this in a very quick response method. The quick response is basically secure the area so that all of these elements that crash to the ground can be protected.
First, like now.
Yes, like now. Because the problem now is, of course, you have a historic building that collapsed. Part of that historic buildings contain historic artifacts. If unprotected and unsupervised, you have now a lot of these tourists coming in because they're so...
I got a piece of that church.
Souvenir and so forth and so on. And before you know it, what you're left is really nothing useful. So you would want to, one way or the other, protect. Yes. You have to sift through the rubble, remove what can be protected, catalog what can be protected, secure them, and clear the site so that you can go to the process of rebuilding.
This is stage one, before it disappears.
Stage one, yes, retrieval.
How come we don't have a group like the Heritage Conservation that is strong enough, that is for the government, for the people, for the country, that is strong enough to step in and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Now, we're going to go to Congress and we're going to ask for an appropriation. Why is it there is none? What are the attached groups? You have the NC...
Well, the attached line agencies in the Philippines wherein Heritage is supposed to be in their forefront.
Yes.
You have the National Commission on Culture and the Arts, the National Historical Commission in the Philippines, NHCP, and then you have the National Museum. The problem with these three agencies is, number one, for the past number of administrations, culture has never been part of the important programs of governance. It was only during the Marcos years, or
because of
culture,
Imelda.
because of Imelda, that, and we have to thank her for that.
Yes,
actually,
I agree with you.
For promoting what is beautiful in the Philippines and what is beautiful in the Filipinos.
Yes,
but then the succeeding administration put culture in the back door. And there's literally no money for these structures to be really conserved or protected. On top of that, whatever budget these agencies have still needs to be spread out to all the other buildings and all the other aspects of the arts that need to be protected and preserved and conserved.
So it's not just the churches that collapsed in Bohol.
No.
All over the country.
All over the country.
You've already identified the
because
number
if
of them.
you're going to if you're going to spend all of your money in one project, what if another earthquake strikes in another part of the country?
So save what is already standing by retrofitting, number
Yes,
one.
yes.
And in those that have collapsed that we have forgotten about, we start the phase of restoration.
Restoration, yes.
So it's an ongoing...
It's an ongoing process. You know, this is a sort of like, if you're talking about a human being, it's sort of like doing the necessary steps so that the person does not die. So you go through all the medical checkups, you do all of the plastic surgery that needs to be undertaken. But
you do the therapy.
Yes, but then it's not just, you're not just going to spend everything on just one person. You have millions of people that you have to spread it to. So that's the problem in this situation.
Why is it, architect, we don't have a very formidable department in government that handles this after all these years? After all, the country is so rich with heritage and culture.
Well, again, as I said, I think it is the main reason that culture and heritage is not given top priority in governance. In other countries, these are vital. You know, if you talk about countries like Italy,
this is the attraction.
France, this is the bread and money of their country.
Correct.
People come here and this is their identity.
The whole of Europe.
Yes.
It's all the old places.
It is their identity, and as it's their identity, they put a lot of money and effort and resources to preserving and conserving these things. In our country, we unfortunately, in the Philippines, we unfortunately don't look at heritage as crucial in nation building. So as long as government looks at heritage or culture in a twisted form, and as long as diluted form, and as long as that anything imported from, say, Korea is far better than what is here in the Philippines, then we look at this simply as just one of those structures that are old that collapse, and so be it, and let's just move on.
What would you suggest, architect? How would you go about this to form a super department? What you were saying this morning, antiquity.
Yes.
A department, possibly a department of antiquity with all the attached agencies, because, like you said, even tourism is part of it.
Yeah.
The NC is part of it, and a lot of other a lot of other groups, all under one realm, but as a independent institution. Hindi pwedeng under politics.
Yes.
Kasi masisira.
Yeah.
Or you'll see the faces of every congressman and governor on the wall.
Yeah. But the problem here is, of course, you know, any department that you create will always be under politics. So.
No, but it's time that we start looking. Well, there are efforts. The internet has brought a lot of noise towards, it's beginning to address surveys that are being questioned. It's being addressed, the internet addresses even the news that's being promoted, because news has one way or another, or called media, it's called the creating perceptions, if not creating the news. If we don't start now, we will lose our heritage, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's imperative. It's not whether I like it. It's not whether
the
governor likes it or the president likes it.
It's not just a matter that we're already losing our heritage. To a certain extent, we have already lost it. So whatever we still have in our countryside is just a sprinkling of what made the Philippines what it is. You know, the mere fact that Manila in 1945 was totally destroyed.
Yes.
What was known as the Pearl of the Orient was totally raped, and we did not rebuild and reconstruct Intramuros, which is 300 years of Spanish history in our country.
It's all right.
Is lost.
It's all right.
And that's the reason why
haphazardly built.
Yes, and that is the reason why Filipinos, by general, are lost peoples. You know, as Hitler did once say, to defeat an enemy, you have to erase their identity. And that's the reason why Hitler wanted to destroy totally and remove from the map Warsaw.
Yes, Warsaw, that's right.
And that's what happened to Manila. We were the second most devastated city in the Second World War, and yet they did not rebuild it.
We did not rebuild
to how it looked like prior to the war.
The old glory. I have pictures of that, even with the cable car along Taft Avenue and everything.
Yes.
Now, voila.
So that is the start of the deterioration of our identity as a people. We don't know who we are. Our identity nowadays is the mall. Our identity nowadays is...
So restoration and heritage is not just a flimsy department. It's not just a flimsy idea for looking good and attracting tourism. It is part and parcel of maintaining the country as called the Philippines.
Yes, yes.
That's how important we should look at it.
Yep.
Not just because, ayusin
Yeah.
natin yan kasi nasira yung simbahan.
It's sort of
It's
like,
not just the
no,
church.
No. Again, these are infrastructures to a certain extent.
Even bridges,
But
for
they
example.
are symbols of
They're
who we
symbols,
are,
yes,
symbols
yes.
of our technology, symbols of our wealth, symbols of our creativity, symbols of our struggles to become a nation.
How much do you reckon we would require? It's not the amount of money, it's not the volume of money, it's the amount of attention that we should give to it based on improving our historical sites. Because like you said, it's not just Bohol, no?
Yeah, no.
It's the whole
everywhere.
country.
It's
The
everywhere.
Heritage Conservation Society, you have identified a lot of our relics and a lot of the antiquities
Well, the
over
heritage,
50
yes.
years old.
Our organization basically is involved in creating much of the noise that is happening around the country. I would like to thank, of course, the ordinary citizen who would send us emails regarding the catastrophes that are occurring within their neighborhoods, within their towns. No?
That's responsible. At least they
yes,
advise you.
They advise us, and then we are the ones, of course, who are bold enough or brazen enough to be the ones becoming the voice of reason to a certain extent. You know, how often have we been criticized by the church, by the state, for interfering in their pet projects? These pet projects of theirs, they would always claim will provide more income, will provide more opportunities. Yes, they do provide income. Yes, they do provide opportunities. But you also lost what? Identity.
But the identity will actually provide even more income
Yes.
and more opportunity above these small projects that
Yes.
politicians sometimes promote.
Yes.
Because that's short term. This is long term.
This is long term. At the end of the day, you know, no matter how much you have a mall there or a Golden Arches there,
Yes, yes.
it's still the identity of the people who are, what makes these people who they are. You know, we're looking at a very, a deeper sense of nationhood here, not just what is in the pockets of the people.
Which is
here.
the strength of the people,
Yes,
the
it's
identity
their
of the people.
Identity, their character. That what makes them who they are. What makes Filipino resilient. You know, when you go around the world and they tell that you're Filipino, you need to have something to
I
be
want to go
proud
see your
of.
country. I want to go visit.
Yes. You need to have something to promote
That's
as a
right.
nation.
That's right. That's
We
right.
just cannot simply promote our beaches because, you know, within this part of the world, we cannot compete with other beaches in the country, in the region.
That's true.
But
That's
then
true.
what makes us different is because we are Filipinos who have a very tumultuous history. And this history is manifested in these built structures that we still have in our midst.
Thank you very much, Architect Noche. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to have to close the show. But before anything else, I'd like to thank Gemma Cruz Arenata, who actually extended the invitation to Architect Noche and to the Heritage Conservation Society. And you have convinced me, if anything, about the importance, the significance of all these old structures, which to me was just old. Now I realize that it is not a matter of what I like or what I don't like. It is trying to understand and conserve who we really are. Architect, what would you like to say as a last 1 minute, 30-second message to our viewers to help them understand further, if necessary, or a parting message to our viewers, basically?
Well, to a certain extent, you know, we need to look back at our past. And the simplest way of looking back at our past is viewing all of these structures in a different light, with a different perspective. They weren't there, they weren't standing there, or they're not standing there for hundreds of years for no reason at all. Their purpose there is to remind us of who we are and what we are and where we will be going in the future. Without them, the Philippines, sadly, is a shallow country to live in.
Thank you very much, Architect. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to end the show. So I guess my message would be to the leaders of this country. It is not your decision to make whether we build, rebuild, or restore. It is your responsibility. It is part of your mandate, not just to the people now, but your mandate for the people who will be here 100, 200 years later. It is your mandate to act now. Money is but a volume and a measure, most of the times found wanting. But like anything else, things weren't built in a day, and if necessary, it'll take us 2 days. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we are trying to help you understand measuring the concept or the importance, the significance of restoration. I believe, but that again, that's personal, we need to restore now. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, architect.
Thank you.
We just have to sit.